Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hi everyone, Stuart Alexander back again with another show. Now today's guest is someone who helps people to solve customer service problems so they can have an amazing outcome. Now he's a customer experience expert, New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and has been inducted into the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame for lifetime achievement in the speaking profession. He works with companies and organizations who want to build loyal relationships with their customers and employees. And he's here today, ladies and gentlemen, to talk to us about some of the problems, some of the obstacles, some of the misconceptions, the pitfalls, and the fears surrounding the individuals and organizations he has a passion around helping the most. So please, welcome to the show, Chief Amazement Officer of Shepherd Presentations, Shep Hyken.
Hey.
Hey,
great introduction.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, you deserve it. You put a lot of work in. You've got a lot of credentials, and I feel great just letting everybody know about what you have achieved. And it's a real honor to have you on the show today, Shep. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, Shep, so let's just jump straight in and set the tone for the rest of the show by asking you the first question of, who is it that you help, Shep? Who's your perfect prospect?
My perfect prospect is anybody that has a customer. That's the short answer. But seriously, to just give you a quick little expansion on that, here's the thing. Everybody has customers. Without customers, you don't have a business. The question is, how do you want to compete? If you've got any competition at all, and even if you don't per se, you should still create a positive experience for the people that do business with you so that they want to do business, and most importantly, will talk about you positively to their friends and their colleagues, family members, whoever they hang out with.
Okay, so when you're out there talking with these prospects that you work with, Shep, what are 2 to 3 common obstacles that you've always seen that prevents them from achieving their desired outcomes?
Sure. Great question. I think first and foremost, most of the companies that hire me are already doing a pretty good job. They just want to take it to the next level. But the ones that are really struggling, there's really 2 or 3 things that I think get in the way. Number one, their culture. The culture that the CEO or the leader of the company has created is not customer focused. Sometimes it's more operations focused, or maybe the concept of customer service is just, hey, everybody just be nice to the customer, which leads us to really the second and third point that kind of go together. To really have a great organization, you've got to have the right people in the right jobs. And if you're a customer-focused organization, that means hiring customer-focused people that have the attitude and the mentality and the drive to want to take care of the customer. And finally, which ties into getting the right people, to make sure they're trained properly. If you don't train them, they're not going to know what to do. And you can have the most hospitality-focused people in the world, people that want to take care of the customer, but if you don't train them on how to do it for your specific, company, responsibility, whatever. And the example I use is maybe you've got a great person that worked at a hotel, totally gets how to take care of the customer, and they go to work at a restaurant. Well, until you teach them, the proper etiquette of, picking up the plate from one side of the guest and dropping off the food, and give them the technical side of service, they're not going to be effective. So training is really important.
Okay, some very valid points that you've mentioned there, Shep. But while you're out there talking with these individuals and organizations, I'm sure there are some popular misconceptions that you come across on a regular basis, popular conceptions that they may have about the outcomes that they want to achieve. Could you just expand on some of those so that it will help some of our listeners, please?
Sure. Well, a moment or two ago, I said something like, the CEO or the leader of the company says, okay, we're going to be customer focused. So everybody go out there and be nice. And I think the first misconception is, since customer service is a soft skill, they don't put the time dollars in training that goes into it. And it's not just one-time training. It's ongoing reinforcement of great behavior that's delivering. And that kind of leads me to number two, because you asked me for two or three. So tied into training, again, companies will onboard people. They'll put them through all this great training, both technical and even soft skill, and they leave it at that. Remember, I just used the words reinforcement. The best companies will spend time ongoing, and sometimes it's just 5 minutes every couple of weeks as part of a bigger meeting, reminding people of the good work that they do with their customers. So once again, training isn't something you did, it's something you do. And I guess what I talk about so much when it comes to great service, and I have simple processes and simple ideas. But simple doesn't mean easy, and that's a big misconception. I created a great little program for my clients, especially in the leadership suites, to look at when it comes to creating that customer-focused culture, and I call it, 6 simple steps to developing a customer service culture. And right up front, I make a statement: simple doesn't mean easy. Recently, I had a client, I had an event where people in the audience, the guy raises his hand, he says, "You keep saying this is simple. I have a pretty big company. Tell me how long it's going to take to implement these ideas." I said, "Well, how big is your company?" He said, $8 billion in sales and approximately 20-some-odd thousand employees. And I said, "You need to spend about the next 3 to 5 years focusing on each of these areas." And he goes, "Really, that long?" I go, "Yeah. Now, if you had 500 people, it might take 6 months, 8 months. If you had 3 people, well, you could do it this week."
Great advice there, Shep. Could you, you just named one example of how you use that concept of simple, but simple does not mean it's easy. Could you just share with us just one more example of where you've implemented that inside of an organization and what kind of impact, what kind of difference that has actually made?
So we'll go back to what I was just talking about. We're talking to leadership. I have this 6-step process to creating a customer-focused culture. Number one, it needs to be defined at the top. That means leadership, CEOs, maybe some other stakeholders come in and they define what that service vision is. Number 2, it's communicated. Number 3, you train your people to it. Number 4, leadership and management demonstrates it and actually walks the walk so other people can see in the company how it's supposed to be. Number 5, they keep it in alignment. If it goes out of alignment, so they defend that culture. And number 6, they celebrate. Now, those are 6 simple steps. I just gave you those 6 steps in about 40 seconds, okay? And if you want to do it right, the first step, which is to define, we sit down in a boardroom with a bunch of people and we'll spend an entire day, maybe 2 or 3 days, and we'll come back sometimes a few weeks later to refine it even more, to try to come up with a simple vision of customer service. That's why I say it's simple, but simple isn't easy. So, and then each one of these processes takes time to go through. And if you want to start to communicate it, well, what happens if you have a company of 500 people or 5,000 or even 50,000? How are you going to communicate that out there? That is no simple, easy feat, okay? In theory, this is the message we want everybody to understand. Now we got to get it there, and sometimes that's complicated. So that's what I mean by that.
Perfect. Great answer. So, Shep, when you think about the individuals that you help, the organizations that you work with, and those people who are, they have the goal of pursuing whatever their objectives are, please share a couple of pitfalls that they should be aware of, things they should keep in mind. There are some things which they should be really careful of. Please share some of those, please.
Well, I think that, customer service is what we're talking about here. And there's a couple of thoughts. Number one is, I think that, again, the pitfall is thinking that if we just, hire Shep to speak for an hour at our meeting, well, that's the first pitfall, because at that point, here's what I say. I'm motivational in my style. Let's say you have, we'll make up a number, 100 people sitting in the audience. Well, at the end of the speech, everybody's going to be fired up, ready to go. They're going to love the ideas that I talked about. But 2 weeks from now, how many people are really going to be doing them? So maybe 10, 15% of the people are going to actually take action, which, by the way, is a huge exponential payoff to whatever it costs to bring me in. So what the pitfall or the misconception, if you will, is that let's bring Shep in. He'll talk for an hour. He's going to change your company. No, I'm not going to change your company. I'm going to give some people some ideas that they will use. I'll get everybody to say, okay, this is an interesting topic. If you really want to change the company, you got to take it to the next level. What are you going to do to sustain this? Sustainability becomes really important. Are you going to bring our trainers in? Are you yourself going to take my content and launch it to another level? So that's a big pitfall. I think people think that just let's bring Shep in for an hour and it's going to change everything. It doesn't. It needs sustainability, which I've already talked about before. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you can't bring people in, onboard them with this skill in one meeting and then expect them to constantly do it for the rest of their career. You need to just keep reinforcing it. And by the way, that doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes reinforcement. Some of the best organizations, let's look at a restaurant. A great restaurant, many times before the doors ever open, they have something called a pre-shift meeting or a pre-open meeting where the manager or the owner of the restaurant simply brings their employees together for 5 or 10 minutes to talk about, hey, everybody, those doors are going to open in just a few minutes. Let's talk about what our specials are going to be. Hey, and yesterday, boy, Bob over here was phenomenal. We had a customer that made a complaint. This is how he took care of it. And you share that story. Well, sharing that story is, in effect, training these people on what the right thing to do is. And by the way, if there's something they shouldn't be doing, you mentioned that. Do it in such a way that isn't embarrassing or berating to the person that, might have made the mistake, but take it as a learning opportunity. All you're doing is you're sharing and reinforcing what's right.
So experiential learning is the order of the day. Is that what I'm hearing?
I love that. I mean, that's one piece of it. So I'll give you an example. This is the number one best takeaway that our clients have. If they want to do something and start to create the customer-focused culture, experiential learning, if you want to call it that, this is what I suggest. Take an index card, or a postcard. Give one to everybody that you work with. And if you have a company of 5,000 people, 5,000 postcards or 5,000 index cards. If it's 100 or 50, it doesn't matter. Every employee writes down an example of when they created a great service experience, either for one of the outside customers or for an internal customer, somebody that they work with, a colleague that they support and do work with, not sell to, if you will. And every week, at the end of the week, you hand this card into your manager, your supervisor, and that manager or supervisor pats the person on the back, says, hey, great job, this is a good example. And by the way, we're not looking for over-the-top, wow, blow-me-away examples. Some of those are going to come. Most of the time, it's like, yeah, I had a customer, they were really happy. I returned the call within 15 minutes, and they were so impressed that we called them back so quickly. Well, that's a moment of magic in my mind. That's a positive experience. Now, here's what happens. The employees write this down, and if it's due at the end of the week, say, let's make it due at noon on Friday. If it's due at noon on Friday, many of the people at about 5 minutes to noon are going to start thinking, well, what did I do this week? And that's stressful, and there's a little bit of pain involved, a pain of the brain. But after 2 or 3 weeks of doing this, they'll be on a Monday afternoon, and they'll say, oh, this is the one I'm going to use for this week. And they write it down at that moment, which, by the way, writing it down takes about 1 minute to 2 minutes to do. That's it. And what happens is we've just made people go from reflecting back on what they've done and trying to remember to becoming caught up in the moment and becoming what I call service aware. This is a great practice. And what happens is the manager takes it, shares, their thoughts with this employee, and maybe takes the best of the best and shares it with the rest of the employees. And they start to create a best practice manual, all based on the experiences that the employees are having and delivering. Talk about experiential learning. That's where the employees become the role models. They become, what the learning's all about. It's really focused all about what they're doing. So it's a powerful, powerful concept.
That sure is powerful. I've never heard experiential learning explained in such a manner. That really is profound. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Shep. So moving on, in your experience, what are 2 to 3 of the most common fears that prevent the people you work with from building loyal relationships with their customers and employees?
Okay, so I don't know if there's two or three of them. I guess you call it pitfalls. Nobody really fears wanting to build a relationship with an with a customer or even employee. But let me tell you what some of the employees actually do fear. They fear making a decision that's customer focused. So in one of my recent books, I wrote about a little simple concept, and it's not my idea. I actually was interviewing some people who were very successful, and I said, tell me what one of your favorite concepts is. I've heard it with other companies too, and it's 1 to say yes, 2 to say no. 1 to say yes, 2 to say no. And what that means is, and you think about a time that you're talking to an employee of whatever business, or you're talking to somebody at a call center, you call in for support, and that person says, before I can give this to you, I need to get approval from my manager. Okay? That is the exact opposite of 1 to say yes. That's 2 to say yes.
Right.
Meaning, I want to say yes, but I got to go to my manager to get approval to say yes. Well, in the best companies, and here's where the fear is. The fear is, am I allowed to say yes without getting in trouble? And if I'm a company that says you're empowered to do so, yet every time you say yes, I micromanage you and say you did it wrong, blah, 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 I'm going to be afraid to say yes. But if I'm truly a 1 to say yes, 2 to say no, and by the way, the 2 to say no means if I have to say no to this customer, I got to go to my manager and ask them, is there any way around this before I actually say no? And if the manager says no, you're going to have to say no. Well, then that's the 2 to say no concept. But the fear is, as an employee, am I empowered to really do this without getting in trouble or without getting reprimanded? And the fear as an employer is I'm afraid to let my people make good decisions. That's why I always got to micromanage them. So the goal is train your people. First, hire the right people who've got this mentality and this mindset. And 2, train them to do the right thing. Give you a quick example. The Ritz-Carlton hotel chain, well known for their great service, empower the housekeepers to spend up to $2,000 to take care of a guest if there's a problem. The housekeeper, not the manager, not the front desk, not some assistant manager, but the actual housekeeper. If they see something wrong, they get to fix it and can spend up to $2,000. And I'll give you an example of how this works. Let's say that I'm staying at the hotel, and I've been there a couple of days, and I noticed that my dirty towels weren't picked up and hung up, and they're still laying on the floor after the housekeeper has left. So I may see the housekeeper in the hall. I go, hey, by the way, I don't know if you realize this, but you left the dirty towels on the floor. You didn't replace the towels. Oh, my God, I'm so sorry. That doesn't mean the housekeeper whips out 20 crisp $100 bills and hands them to me. No.
Yeah,
what
sure.
the housekeeper does is apologizes, says they're sorry, goes in, fixes it by replacing the towels, and maybe he writes a short little note that says, I'm really sorry for the inconvenience, and underneath it is a small little box of chocolate, maybe $1 or $2 for a box, little couple of pieces of chocolate. Say, just wanted to leave you something sweet to help sweeten the experience or whatever, just some clever thing. Well, they just spent $2, not $2,000, to say they were sorry to a guest who was upset about towels on the floor. Not that towels on the floor would get anybody all that upset, but you get the idea.
Yeah, sure.
They're empowered. They make a good decision. The management says we've trained them well. They know when to spend the money, when not to spend the money, when to spend more money, that kind of thing.
And that must be absolutely fantastic just for their confidence in the company that they're working for, and in their confidence just to stretch themselves and, to be creative within their own workspace. That's an awesome process. I really love the sound of that. So thanks for sharing that with us, Shep. We've come to the point where whenever I ask this question, it kind of sounds obvious, but I think it's a really important question to ask. In terms of the people that you work with, Chef, why would they actually want to achieve the outcome of building loyal relationships with their customers and employees?
Well, every stat and fact points to the idea that, you want your customers to come back. You want your customers to tell their friends about you, their friends or colleagues. So a couple of things. Why wouldn't somebody want this? Once again, back to something I said earlier in our interview. In order to be successful, you have to have customers. Okay, you without customers, you don't have a business. I don't care how good whatever it is you sell or whatever it is you do is. Without a customer, it doesn't matter. So, why would somebody want this? It's simple. because I want to do business. I want to be successful. It may be the motive of money. It may be it's something more altruistic, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you want your customers to come back. You want them to talk about you. Word of mouth marketing is the most effective marketing that you can have. Some of my clients recognize that their best marketing department isn't actually a department. It's the employees doing what they're supposed to do, so the people walk away and say, wow, I always can count on them. They always take care of me. They're always so friendly. And by the way, that word always is real important to create the confidence, because that means the experience becomes predictable. So people come back, and when people come back, the loyal customer spends more than the satisfied customer. And of course, the loyal customer talks about you to their friends, which means you have incremental growth in business because of the people that they bring to you. Who wouldn't want to have a loyal customer?
I totally agree. And, the advice that you've been sharing with us today, Shep, it comes out of your mouth like an AK-47. There's just one after the other. It's just straight, bang, 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 but all so accurate. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Unfortunately, we're coming towards the end of the interview, and at this particular stage, it's been fantastic so far. We know who you have the greatest passion around helping. You've spoken about some of the most common obstacles that they have, the popular misconceptions that they may have bought into, some of the harmful pitfalls that they should be aware of, and the fears that hold them back, as well as some of the emotional and logical reasons that you just spoke about, which could prevent them from achieving their goals. So now that we know all of that, Shep, let's talk a little bit about your solution. What is it exactly? Does it have a name? You've touched on some of the processes within your solution earlier on, but does it have a name? Does it have a brand? What made you come up with the idea in the first place, and what inspired you to help the kinds of people that you work with today?
Wow. A lot of questions there rolled into this one. So, do I have a brand? My brand is amazing. I want to teach people to be amazing for their customers, amazing to be around. I want people to create amazing companies. I actually have, you talk about where you learn this, and we have a program. We put this, aside from being able to hire me or have my trainers come out and deliver on site, we have on demand. And what I love about on demand, and by the way, if you go to shepondemand.com, you can have me, as long as you've got an internet connection, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, teaching you one-on-one all of the things that we teach our clients in our customer service training programs, and that we'll spend 2 and 3 days with our clients, and you get it one-on-one. We have companies that use this. So that's my brand. My brand is, I want to help people be amazing, and we feel we've got the tools to do it. How I think there was a question of what got me going in that direction. So I can go all the way back to when I was age 12, and I started my first business, my birthday party magic show business, where I went out and performed at birthday parties.
Nice.
And the first time I came home, my mom said, "What are you going to do after dinner?" And I thought she said it was like, "Well, go do your homework." No, it was go write a thank you note. And then my dad said, "Hey, you need to call the parents like a week later and thank them again and find out if you did a good job." So isn't that what we do for any customer? Number one, we want to show them appreciation. Number two, we want to make sure we're doing a good job. So if there's a problem, that we could fix it. More importantly, if we find out we're doing a good job, maybe we can say, well, what else can we do for you? My dad said, when you call those parents and they say, we loved you, say, hey, I noticed that little Bobby, whose birthday it was, has a little sister named Susie. You think she wants a magician at her party? Yeah. What about those parents in the back? Could I get their names and numbers so I can call them? Boy, within about a year and a half, I was doing 8 to 10 magic shows a week.
Awesome. Awesome.
But it all started with showing appreciation and making sure I did a good job, which is what every company wants to do. So when I graduated college, I thought I was going to be working for a company in the retail world. They owned, actually, I jokingly say, I went into the oil business. I pumped gas. But no, they had retail convenience stores and gas stations, southern half of the United States. I thought I was going to work for them. Within about 6 to 8 months of being there, I got called into the office and was informed that they were selling the company and I wouldn't have a job. And so I went, wow, what am I going to do? Well, what do I love to do? Love to entertain? Well, I don't really want to be an entertainer. Love business? Boy, I love that. How can I make this work? I saw a couple of motivational speakers, and I said, that's what I can do. And I wrote a speech about creating this moment of magic, and I used a little magic from, my magic background and put it in there to make it entertaining. And really, that's how it all started. And I just started researching, and I took my background. I mean, I worked at a gas station, and, eventually I was director of station operations and marketing for the company at a very young age, by the way, pretty much right out of college. They made me a region manager because I'd been working with them throughout college and summer jobs throughout high school. And I mean, I figured out the operation, and I knew we want to take care of customers. There was an elderly woman that on a very, very cold day, I told her to stay in her car, and I pumped her gas. We're a self-serve station. I was working for the stations, and a manager said to me, "Why did you do that?" And I basically said, because I didn't want her to fall and break a hip. I mean, I don't know. And it's cold out there. And he said, well, now she's going to expect that every time. I go, well, so what? At least if she comes here every time, she's not going across the street or down the road. That's customer service. And that's been my belief and my philosophy. And I was learning when I did it right, sometimes I would be they would pat me on the back. And even when I thought I was doing right, a guy like the manager I was working for, I knew, even though he told me he was upset with me for doing that, I knew that I was right and he was wrong. But I just dealt with it. And eventually, I mean, you can see the philosophies that I talk about, the things that I do, they all stem from some of that experience, plus all the research, as well as all the clients that have worked with me. I learned from every one of them as well.
Well, I just had to snap myself out of my hypnotic state there. This story.
I hope it wasn't because I put you to sleep.
Hell, no, I'm the total opposite there. The story is just so interesting. You just pulled me right into it. What an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, the thank you cards idea from your mum, what a great inspiration that must have been for you. The woman at the gas station, love that too. So, man, I could just sit here and listen to you talk all day. It's been an amazing interview, Shep. But unfortunately, we do have to go. But before we go, if there are any individuals out there or someone representing an organization, such as an HR director or an event organizer, investors, vendors, or any other key business decision makers that are listening to this show, and they're thinking, well, he looks kind of good. He looks like the American version of James Bond. Pretty good-looking guy. Sounds really smart. And they want to know more. They want to connect with you. They want to find you. How would they be able to do that, Shep? How would people connect with you?
Well, it's easy. Hyken.com, Hyken.com. Twitter is @Hyken. Of course, just look me up on LinkedIn, Shep Hyken. We can connect there. If you want me in your home or in your office or your entire company you can obviously hire me to come and speak, but we've got the on-demand, shepondemand.com. So check those out and we'll connect. And if you do subscribe to my newsletter, and I will promise this, it is truly an article I write. There's really no blatant promotion. It's simply an article. I include a little cartoon usually once a week, and you can use this for your company. You can share it with everybody, make copies, and distribute it to your employees. It's a great little resource. So I promise you'll enjoy that, and that's how you reach me.
Shep, I think you have come onto the show and proven that you are an educator, that you are an advocate for the success of the people that you have the greatest passion around helping. So I really want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and do that. Before we leave, any final thoughts for the listeners out there?
Wow. You know what? We've talked a lot about customer service. It's not a department. It's a philosophy. It's an attitude. Everybody you work with, they're your internal customer. Everybody who pays you for what you do, they're the external customer. So manage every interaction you have for an above average experience. And if you are aware of it and you're thinking about it, you'll be out there, you'll be delivering moments of magic, and people will walk away and say, I love doing business with him or her. I love working with him or her. That person, they're amazing.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.